I have an infinite work game. It's not a finite type of thing. I'm growing constantly. Keep showing up, keep taking action, and keep moving forward. That's what it comes. And don't blow up. Don't bet it all on one number, because if you blow up, you're done. Whereas if you make small bets throughout, you're kind of guaranteed to keep winning, and you will lose bets, and that's okay. That's another mindset shift of not looking at things as failure anymore, just looking, hey, I'm going to do experiments. Some are going to work, some aren't. And so I'm going to play my life as experiments, and just shifting the psychology around that, I think. Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is me, on the other side of the microphone, interviewed by my good friend and mastermind partner, Tyler Jeffcoat. I know you're going to enjoy it. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. I created the beginning episodes of this podcast back in 2016 when I was writing them all out, trying to lay out the foundation of what we were going to do. And as I go back and listen to those, I don't think the foundation has changed. Maybe it's evolved, it's surely gotten better. And I think it's more and more proven that a lot of it is the case. I told you I wasn't an expert. I still don't think I am, but we've come a tremendous way since then. When I first started and released that first episode at the beginning of 2017, no idea where this was going and who our guests would be. And I'll be honest, I'm shocked and amazed at the people I've gotten a chance to talk to and what I've learned along that journey, and also how I've changed. One of the things, though, I realize is on a lot of episodes you hear from the guests, you don't always get my side of the story or how I'm feeling in the moment. So we're going to do that today. You may or may not remember, but I am part of a mastermind group, and one of my buddies in my mastermind group is actually going to interview me, and we're going to chat about that journey, those core principles, and how they still apply to me today, and how I implement them. So with that, let's flip the mics. Let's bring Tyler on.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is a special episode of The Richer Soul. And you don't know who I am. My name's Tyler Jeffcoat, and Rocky and I have been good buddies now. We're in a mastermind together. We've been doing life together for, Rocky, probably 5 years. And I just got to thinking the other day, Rocky, somebody has got to put a stop to this. We've got to hijack this podcast and bring you on as the guest. And the reason for this, Rocky, is that my observation of you is that you actually do this stuff. You actually live your life imperfectly like we all do, but in such a way as to try to apply the principles that you bring these great expert speakers on to talk about. And so in today's interview, guys, this is really going to be a treat. We're going to turn the microphone, turn the camera around on Rocky, get a sense for him, just who I am really quickly. I've owned a couple businesses. I sold my most recent business about 2 months ago. And now I am using some of my extra time to just serve my friends. Rocky's one of my good friends, and so I'm on the show today. Anything to start, Rocky, before I start peppering you?
No, let's roll.
Okay. Rocky, you talk a lot about these 8 kind of core guiding principles. For those of you guys who haven't gone back and listened to the first handful of episodes that Rocky recorded, by the way, Rocky, you're over 400 episodes deep into this podcast. So you got to scroll way back, but it's worth going back and listening to those. And so I guess what I was thinking here, Rocky, is I want to just go through those principles and just kind of see over the last 7, 8 years how your thinking has evolved. Does that sound good?
That sounds wonderful.
All right. So we're going to start with purpose, life planning. And I guess my question for you is, how has your life purpose, how has your life plan evolved since you recorded that primer episode back in 2017?
So when we did that 2017 episode, I already had a life plan in place. And I think since then we've updated it, major updates, I think about twice. The last one was, I think, the beginning of this year, right? When I shared it with everyone. And honestly, the biggest part of what's changed is all the accomplishments. Like, there were parts of that. The kids are done. They're grown. They're out. So life has evolved and changed. And we talk a little bit about evolution as you age. And a lot of that actually came out of the Harvard Grant study, which was surprising to me, that every decade of life, you're in a different place. And the most surprising thing about that study was people forgot what they said 10 years ago. People actually, half the time, were in an opposite position 10 years later. And it's interesting to note that. Now, if I look at that life plan, I don't think there's anything there that I said, oh, I don't want to do this per se anymore. I think the biggest shift that happened was going from working in corporate to having my own business. And actually starting your own business creates a whole lot of growth, and it also creates a whole lot of freedom, because you're no longer, you can't blame anyone anymore, right? You're sitting in the seat and you're responsible literally to go hunt, right? You've got to get your own clients, deliver your services, take care of every part of the business, and kind of own it. So I think a big part of that is, launching kids, having them, they're off the family payroll. We're not supporting them in their early 20s. And that's because those financial principles that we always talk about, my kids learned them from the age of 5. Like, they get money. They know how to deal with it. They're building their wealth rather quickly at a young age. And it's funny, they didn't understand it when they were young, but once they started hitting college and they started to see how other people behave, they realized what a difference it was. And same thing for me. I always talk about it. I didn't realize how much my upbringing and how much I learned about money as a kid actually kind of rolled into it. The other thing that's most surprising is we talk about purpose constantly. And yet if I go out in the world, or even if I talk to my clients, people are afraid to actually do the inner work to define their purpose and make shifts in their life to live in alignment with who they are. I think that's the most surprising thing. It's still a very, very small percentage of people who do that.
And Rocky, why do you think that is? Why is it that, because I agree with you, why is it that so many people, is it fear? Is it busy? Is it not knowing how? Like, what is it that keeps people from doing this process?
It's not an information gap, right? Because there's, the book that I use and I've always talked about, Living Forward, is literally so simple. It's not difficult. I think people don't want to take the time to look inside. I literally think that they don't want to examine themselves. And I still don't understand why that is. And it's kind of funny. And I was just at an event, and actually it was with the episode that just dropped, this last episode, which was Brad Golfany. And he separated the room into people who wanted to clean up their baggage and people who wanted to move forward. And here's the thing, you can't move forward until you clean up your baggage, right? That's just the reality of it. And I said to him, I was shocked that it was 50-50 because I'm used to like small percentages. And he said, yeah, the reality is they were lying to themselves. He goes, it's not 50-50. When you start to have conversations about moving forward, you realize what's holding you back. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's when you start to do this work, you go, oh, crap, I got to fix all this stuff. And people just don't want to face the mirror. And we've always talked about that.
Yeah, that is so. I think that's probably a big part of it is that facing our own life forces us to kind of come to grips with the choices we made. I think that's really powerful. Well, so for listeners that struggle to kind of put boots on that, to articulate their purpose, to make sure they're heading in the right direction. Like, I guess, has anything changed in the way you would advise people to try to self-discover their purpose?
I don't think anything's changed. I mean, I use Michael Hyatt's book, Living Forward. I still, to this day, this is probably almost 10 years later, I still recommend the same book. I still recommend the same process. And I do it because it's easy, it's clear, and it's 100% customizable to people. In other words, it doesn't matter who you are or what you want. It's still a universal framework because you get to pick all your buckets in the areas that you want to work on. And so from that standpoint, I think it still works. And the other thing that I really love about it, and this one's kind of a little bit counter to what people think. When you look at other people's life plans, which he shows you with the book, crossing out all the ones you don't like is actually the most helpful thing. Because when you start closing doors, it leaves very few left that you can open. You start saying, I don't want this and I don't want that, and I'm not going to do this. And you start looking at something and go, well, it doesn't meet my criteria because I said I didn't want this. And I think that makes it so much easier because you ask people what they want and you go, I don't know. Well, then like take your wife, right? And we're not going to talk specifically about her, but you say to her, hey, let's go out to dinner. What do you want? And she's like, I don't know. You go, well, let's go to Chinese. No. How about Mexican? No. Right. And all of a sudden now you're left with left choices and it becomes easier to pick a place to go to. And I think the same thing's true of life.
No, it's so well said, dude. Yeah, so well said. So something you said in one of those early episodes, kind of leaning into the health side of this, is you said, guys, health is the real wealth. What do you mean by that?
Well, part of it is, let's face it, if you're not healthy, right, you can't do what you want in life, especially as you age. And I think this is what happens. People take their 20s and 30s for granted, and that's fine. But once you start getting into your 50s and your 60s, that's really where you're at a point, I think, right around 50, where if you are not in great shape, the next part of your life is going to be downhill. And I think what most people, when you look at health, if you think about it, most people from 50 to whenever they die, it's like it's an angular line straight down. Like every year it gets a little bit worse. And yet I think there's been rapid advances in health span. And what health span basically says is from 50 to maybe very close to death, instead of just constantly declining, you might decline a little throughout that period, but you still can live life. You can still travel. You can still do things, whatever it is. You can still golf. Now, maybe you're not going to drive it as far, but you're still able to go do that. And then in the last 6 months of life, or maybe not even, maybe it's quick, you have this rapid decline at the end. And so I think that's a big thing. The second thing is the cost. Let's face it, if you're unhealthy, all your time and effort and money is going where? To your health, right? It's life-changing if you have a cancer diagnosis or something else, or if you're not able to take care of yourself. And I coached sports for years. It always amazed me, like people would, I'll call it, break themselves. They would go do something in sports or working out where they hurt themselves to the point that when I talk to guys in their 40s, I'm like, hey, why don't you go lift? Oh, my shoulder's bad. Now, maybe it's an excuse, or maybe it actually is bad. It's probably an excuse. I'll go with that. But if you hurt yourself, you can't do these things. And I think that's what people kind of take for granted.
Well, something I love, by the way, that reminds me of a quote. One of my favorite Rockyisms. Again, we're in a mastermind of guys. And believe it or not, the Rockyisms come out regularly. And we have guys in the group that'll go into some kind of insane, intense workout or diet. Sometimes they actually will literally do 75 hard, which is one of them out there. And Rocky will always chime in and say, listen, guys, I prefer to do the 365 easy plan. Can you teach me the 365 easy plan? And I think that kind of goes to the point you were just making there, that we can have, and actually you mentioned this in that health episode way back at the beginning, we can have this yo-yo mentality of go a million miles an hour, break something, get hurt, get burned out, versus creating a sustainable rhythm of protecting your health. Like, am I saying that right? How do you view kind of going from insanity to kind of just being sustainable?
For me, health is just part of my daily rhythm, which means the first part of my morning every day, at least during, I find I have a rhythm for the week and a rhythm for the weekend. It's just me. So pretty much Monday through Friday, I begin my day by movement, whether it's lifting heavy weights, doing a yoga thing, and I think we might have talked about GMB.io in that first episode because I've been doing it forever. It's movement culture. You know, here's the thing. At the end of the day, we're really not much different than an ape, right? Or a monkey, so to speak, right? And yet, why is it that monkeys can climb trees and swing and do all these things and we humans can't? And yet, if you go watch someone doing parkour, you can see that we can do those things. But we've been taught not to. We've been taught to sit instead of to actually move. And I think we can do a lot more than we imagine, but we just haven't been shown how, and we've forgotten how to do those things. But yeah, you have to move. I mean, if you're not moving, you're rusting. And that comes back to health, right? If you just sit around, that's where you end up, I think.
So, Rocky, part of your journey, and I really admire this about you, is that you lost a pretty good chunk of weight several years back. I think it was close to 50 pounds. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And so, like, let me ask you this. As the person listening to this who, well, first of all, I'm like in the middle of a weight journey myself. I really respect being able to look up to guys who are doing it. Like, what were the things that have allowed you to lose weight, if that's was your goal, and then to be able to maintain a lifestyle? Like, what has kind of helped you be successful in that regard?
So, I think we're taught wrong about the gym partially. So when I go into my gym, there's two halves to the gym. There's the right half and the left half. And on the left half is where all the free weights are. And on the right half is where the cardio and the machines are. And the funny thing is, I spent my whole life trying to use those machines. And I made 20% progress, right? So maybe I started at 100 pounds on that machine, and 3 years later, I'm at 120. I wasn't able to keep going for whatever reason. Maybe that's me. Maybe others have. When I started to use free weights, and I followed a systematic way of doing it that they kind of taught, which was actually to start at a much lower weight and to consistently increase by small increments every week. That is what really took off from the muscle side. And then as part of that, when you have more muscle, I think you burn more calories just naturally. So that kind of shifted the whole way that my body was reacting to foods, getting rid of sugar, especially refined sugar, low carb, cutting the eating window down, dramatic shift. Now, I'm going to be honest. I kept that weight off for a long, long time. The last couple of years, I've struggled. I've gained it back. Not I haven't gained the 50 pounds. I've gained back weight and I struggled to lose it. And just in examining it, I think the biggest problem is travel. Like when I travel, you get off of rhythm and maybe you only pick up 3 or 4 pounds. But when you go on 6 trips a year, that very quickly, if it sticks, it causes a problem. So I've been struggling to figure out, like, again, you age, your body changes, your needs change. So I've got to kind of find that next key to be able to do that. But yeah, I think I've really learned tremendously more, just not only about what you eat, but the fact that and we've talked about this on episodes, our food system is broken. It's corporate food. It's not real food. And even if you pick up vegetables or things, fruits, some of this stuff has been sitting in a warehouse for a year. And that is a problem. And I still struggle with that. How do you find good, proper, and well-raised meat? And same for vegetables. I know you can sign up for these things where every week you get stuff that's in season. But for me, I don't know how to cook half this stuff, and I don't want to. So, it's a back and forth on that. It's still a bit of a struggle.
I feel that. Well, I mean, I think that's just life, Rock, right? I mean, like the seasons change. I will say this just to kind of augment. Rocky, you've encouraged me in a couple of ways, and you just mentioned a few of them, but one of them I want to highlight is how diligent you've been to measure, your weight and measure. You do a great job of keeping a scorecard for yourself of data. And I think that's really helped you to, yes, you haven't lost all the way back down to your fighting weight, but you haven't gained near that 50 pounds you lost. And your secret for that has been, I believe, kind of being able to make small tweaks and adjustments to kind of listen to your body and, oh, wow, I'm a few years older now. This food is going to react a little differently than it maybe did 5 years ago. Is that fair to say?
It is. And I've used a lot of new technology that comes out. We had an episode where one of the people talked about the lumen. I'm kind of half and half on lumen. What it does is it measures your CO2 and it tells you if you're burning fat or carbs. And what I have noticed, for me at least, I think when you're young, you can move back and forth real quick. Nowadays, I've noticed it takes me days to move. So it's not about what did I eat today? It's about what did I eat over the last 4 days? And things have kind of slowed down with that. I've worn glucose monitors over the continuous ones from time to time, just because I want to see how different foods actually affect me personally. So we've done that. And again, I think in the United States, insulin resistance is a big issue. So proper meds and taking things proactively, not reactively. So preventing the onset of diabetes, and you can do that through food, through meds, through exercise, a whole variety of different things there. And yeah, I have automated as much of that as possible. So when I step on my scale in the morning, I don't have to do anything. It automatically goes into Apple Health along with a whole bunch of other data. And so I've made it easy to do it, and I've made it routine. So it's not like, oh my God, I got to do this and keep this notebook and, make it simple. Put a little money into automating and be done.
Couldn't agree more with that. I think, in fact, you and I, again, were at a meeting a few years ago where you recommended, guys, I think it was like $60. It wasn't that much money to buy a scale that would pair with a free app on my iPhone, where now I'm not calculating, because guess what? I'll lie to myself if I'm calculating. I'm like, yeah, it's probably just an off day. I need the data to be like not refutable in order for me to listen to it. And most of us do. Guys, that's good advice. You should take it. Rocky, let's talk about time. Aside from your health, because you've kind of I can't wait to talk to you about money, but you've kind of done so well financially that your core focus in our mastermind over the last few years, and it seems to me like it's kind of been mostly around time, how valuable time is. How do I block my time? How do I manage my time? How do I improve the way I kind of deploy my energy? And so my question for you is, like, how do you ensure that you spend time on what really matters?
I just saw a quote the other day and I wrote it down. We're all told time is money. And this quote was, time is more precious than money. And I was like, oh, wow, that's taking it another step forward. Through our mastermind group, I got introduced to the 12-week year. So I think that's a big part of it, is being much more intentional in defining what it is that you want to do, being much more intentional in saying no to things, because, and you know this from me, like I got 12 million bucks and there's another stack upstairs. Learning how to say no so that you can say yes is a big part of it. And then being intentional with building out the calendar. I mean, my calendar gets built out a year in advance of where we're going, what we're doing, time blocking around travel so that it's not hectic. And my kids knew this growing up. Like, if it's not on dad's calendar, it doesn't exist. And so we've been very, very focused. Again, that same thing of tracking. And it's even forward tracking. Hey, these are the things I want to do. These are my big rocks. Let's get them on the calendar first. And then everything else can kind of fill in. So I've been real good about even tasks that need to be done, and when they need to be done, they get put on the calendar. And because I found, for me, if I had 15 minutes and I had to decide what to do, I would waste 15 minutes deciding what to do. But if I had 15 minutes and I had 4 tasks, I'm like, okay, let's just rip through these. I only have 15 minutes. Now I'm constrained. So let's just get through this as fast as possible. And so that's basically what we do. And the things that we talked about, like, and you probably don't know this, but our grocery list is in Excel, and I print it out and it goes on the fridge so that when you need stuff, you just literally check box it. But the genius of it is it's in the order of the store. So when I go to the store, I just follow the list and it takes me through the store, and I'm in and out and I don't look around because I'm looking at the list. I'm not looking at the shelf. So there's no distraction, right? That's a big part of time too. What distractions are you eliminating? How do you eliminate them? And I'm human too. I get sucked into social media and some of these other things, and it's not hard to get stuck there, but it's being intentional about how and when you do it, I think. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform.
Rocky, I'm about to give you 2 hours of your life back each week. It's like $9 a week, Rocky, for me to use an app and have the groceries delivered to my door.
It's not $9 a week. Because if you actually look at, and this is where it's hidden, the cost I've just looked locally, like the cost in the app at our local grocery store versus walking into the store is not the same. Like, the prices are considerably higher in the app than they are in the store. And so that's one problem. The $5 delivery fee, I'm all in. To be honest, I shop one day a week. We tend to buy fresh, and I don't trust someone else to pick my vegetables.
No.
And we literally, like, I go to the butcher counter and I will look and we'll make decisions based on what's available and this and that. For certain people that works. And I agree with you because of the way we eat and how we do things. I'm okay with it. And because I live at home all the time, it's a chance to get out. And I don't mind that.
Well, it's just,
but in the same way, I use Amazon like crazy now. Like, I just I'm not going to go to the store and buy all these little one-off things. We just order it on Amazon. I don't care. Let it be delivered in a week because I don't need it for a week.
I think what we found is, yes, I don't, every time we've tried to order produce or meats, we've been pretty disappointed. So we just don't do that. There are some things that my kids are just going to eat because my kids haven't been launched yet, right? My kids are 10, 12. And so the things that we're going to have to buy, even like up to like milk, eggs, bread, we order those. And I don't think I've seen a big, let's put it this way. I haven't seen enough of a disparity in the price that if you and I were to calculate our hourly value as the CEOs of our companies, that we should worry about the price. Win. I understand you wanting to get out. Yeah. I do think you're right. Like I still have to go down. We have Publix down here in the South. So I still have to go to a real grocery store if I want to buy good meat and good fruits and vegetables. But the point is, and this is what I think is so valuable about this, guys, is that we do have to choose to value our time highly. And guess what? If you love grocery shopping because it gets you out of the house, and Rocky, you're kind of a deal guy also, like you really like that meets a need for you. Like give yourself, if you've organized your time where you have it, give yourself permission to go do the thing. Like for me, I know that I'm bro, I don't feel great about this, but I'm an impulse buyer. If I'm in a grocery store, I'll have the list. I'll have it and still buy the other stuff. And so for me, it saves me on so many levels to automate that as well, because our grocery list is largely automated where I can double check 2 things, click go. And, but you guys got to figure out what works for you.
And I agree with you. And for me, it is also systematic in that Fridays, at least this is the current rhythm. Fridays, I go to this stretch place, and literally they stretch me for an hour. Because if I had to stretch myself for an hour, it wouldn't happen. And then I go after that, I go to I call it the spa gym. It's not a real gym, even though they pretend they're a real gym, but they have red light therapy. They have massage chairs, all that stuff. And so I go do that. And then I'm right next to the grocery store. So then I can pick up my groceries because I'm right there. And so it's not like I'm driving. And then I hop over to Costco, and sometimes we need gas. So I'm there, I get gas, and I can get in and out of Costco relatively quickly. But I also like to look for different things at Costco, like, hey, what's something a little bit different to try for dinner? And so sometimes it's just being there and saying, all right, what are we going to do a little different this week? But otherwise, it's literally one trip a week. Everything is automated and done, and we're in and out inside of an hour. From a dollars to cents standpoint, you're right. Like 1 hour of my time is worth more than all the money I spent on all the groceries. So you win.
Well, hey, listen, I'm just trying to take advice from my friends like you. But so, okay, listen, one of the most recurring topics as I was just scanning through the episodes for the Richer Soul is just this idea of overcoming limiting beliefs, of leveling up our mindset and the way that impacts our choices and our performance. My question for you is, you do discuss this a lot, shifting mindsets around work, around life. What have you learned through all these discussions with these great experts that's helped you shift mindset internally?
The number one thing I learned was how many of my mindsets I was blind to. And so over these years, if you ask me, probably the one area that has shifted the most is understanding, I'll call it programming. understanding my default programming and what it's doing that I'm totally blind to. And it's like, oh, this was programmed when you were 6, and this was programmed when you were 12, and this was and going back and examining all of those things and literally reprogramming them or removing them or challenging them or getting comfortable with them and letting go of ego and being, like we talked about, starting a business changes your mindsets considerably about how you look at things, how you value your time value for money it's all of a sudden becomes a big shift. And so I think the biggest thing is that constant reevaluating those and truly challenging them and saying, is this true? And a lot of it, I think, is really counterintuitive to what we're taught to believe. And the other part is getting comfortable with examining yourself and being okay and doing that constantly, like making it a practice. And I probably have to go back and reread. Brendan Burchard actually he's such a systems guy, but I didn't, I know in the back of my mind reading it, but literally he's like, every time I walk through a door, I reframe. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm walking through doors and I'm busy and I'm this and I'm that. And I'm noticing that. I'm noticing core programming beliefs. And we can talk about this during money because, in our mastermind group, we're at opposite ends with money with some of the guys and there are beliefs about it. And parts of my things, yeah, they've cost me over 7 figures in not doing certain things. But I'm okay with that too, because and we talked about it in one episode, and I loved that the beginning comment of his, when everything's good, everyone's happy. But when you're wrong, what kind of wrong do you want to be? And one of the things, and you notice a lot with business owners, you notice a lot in self-help books, everybody blows up at some point. And my underlying driving thing was never blow up. And I think that's what Warren Buffett's always been good at. Just don't blow up and you'll be okay. And having that patience and everything else, I still struggle mindset wise with patience versus, seeing people get fast success and all of that. And it is a struggle. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is you've got to look at and then the other part of it is, and we do this in the mastermind, is the duct tape session, right? Where you got to sit there with your mouth shut and people are going to talk about you in front of you, tell you your strengths, your weaknesses, your being able to hear it, listen to it, accept it, internalize it, and then decide if you want to change it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And so I can't wait to get into the money side of this because you are the money guy in my sphere of friends. But let's talk about psychology for a second. So listen, dude, I get this because I live this in a world where constantly being pushed to consume. I mean, my God, Rocky, how much of our life has been pushed by the marketing engines that are PhD level engineered to consume our attention, to consume our energy, to consume our money. My question is, what insights have you gained on building a resilient money mindset that supports what you think is true fulfillment? I mean, how much stuff is enough?
That is a question I ask people, and most people can't answer that question. And when I say most people, I'm not talking about people who are living paycheck to paycheck. I'm talking about people who have 5, 10, 50, $100 million. And they're playing a game because they don't know how to play any other game. It's like, well, and the next deal, the next this, the next that. And they struggle, and they'll admit it to themselves over time Well, I did another deal, but there was no excitement in it. Yeah, because you've got enough. It's no longer exciting. So, how do you play life on your own terms outside the rules that everyone else has defined for you? Get married, buy a house, have kids, get a dog. Like, what if you decided to just play by a whole different set of rules? Then money becomes what it truly is, a tool. You use it for fulfillment. And here's the other thing that I've also kind of learned. Money doesn't necessarily make me happy, but what it does is it takes away all my misery, right? So if you're struggling with going to the grocery store, well, money will take away that. You can have it delivered. If there's, like, for me, we've got iPhone chargers everywhere. I've got iPhone cables everywhere. There's cables just already packed into the suitcase for when we travel. So I don't have to think about like these little things. And yet people come over my house and they're like, they don't have a phone cable in their car. They don't have a phone cable on them. Their phone's dying. And now everything's about, how do I charge my phone? I'm like, it's getting rid of all these little miseries in life that can easily be handled for small amounts of money and make it simple.
I love that. I think that's really, really well said. It's amazing how many crucial, call them creature comforts, call them just rhythm of life things that you don't need to be $10 million in your bank account to accomplish. You just need to kind of have that systems mindset that you alluded from Brendan's book, of where so much of it is, can I engineer the little things in my life to protect my precious energy for things that matter, instead of having to kind of find the darn charger for my cell phone, right?
One of the reasons I bought the BMW is because I put the key in my pocket and I walk up and it automatically, I don't have to even unlock it. It just unlocks when I get there. And when I get out of the car, I walk away and it just locks and I don't even have to think about it. And it's funny because when I drive my wife's car, I leave it unlocked because I forget that I have to lock and unlock it. It's those simple things of just taking out the little bits of friction that make your life easier. And that's really the key. And it's taken my wife years to teach her how to put systems and processes into place to make life 10x easier. So it's funny. I was away this weekend. I came home and I go into the bathroom and on the floor is the wrapper for the toilet paper. I'm like, oh, we're out of toilet paper. I need to bring up a whole nother thing of it. And I've taught my wife, stop taking the last roll and not tell anyone and forget about it. And then you have, it's like it down to that level of ease. And you talk about the guys like who work in tech, they all wear the same clothes, right? For years, I don't want to pick clothes. I don't want to think about these little teeny things. Just make it simple. And then you don't have, it's taking those things away that I think allow you to experience joy.
Yeah, I found this, by the way, a personal story about this. I had the opportunity, because I did just sell my business a month and a half ago, to take a full week alone, kind of in a mountain house by myself. And I'm so grateful. I had a family member loan me this house, didn't have to pay a dime for it. Beauty, fall weather. But what struck me as I was studying simplicity and solitude for myself, that's what I was there to do. What struck me is there's kind of clutter everywhere. And I started kind of judging my family member for a second. And then I realized, oh man, like, what about my closet? What about the like random mass junk drawer in my kitchen? Right. And so anyway, this is one of my kind of resolutions coming out of that time, Rocky, is I got to spend 5 minutes a day finding something that I can do a meaningful declutter / engineer that system where it's just easy. It's not 75 hard. It's 365 easy.
That's it. Get rid of junk.
I mean, guys, it's amazing how, I don't know about you, Rocky. I know about you enough to know this is true, but it is amazing how you're like, that's garbage. Like my psychology isn't impacted by my stuff, but guys, it is. It's big time kind of impacted by what we have our stuff surrounded with. So dude, let's everyone's wanted to get here, Rocky. We want to talk about money. We want to talk about finances. You talk a lot. You've been talking about this for years. pay yourself first and creating financial runway. These are kind of like the two pillars of Rocky's financial thesis. My question is, have you had to refine those principles, or how are you applying those principles nowadays to your customers and to your audience?
I have not had to refine them. What I've realized is there's a missing part of it, and that's part of the struggle. So paying yourself first, meaning you're pulling money out before you spend it, and you're just setting it aside. Then you don't have to worry about how you spend the money you have left, as long as you don't overspend the money you have left. And we just had a conversation about that a week or two ago, I think. And so the simplicity of that works. The skill that I think that I didn't realize was important, and now at my stage in life is so much more important, is how do you make your money grow? So first part is saving it, not getting yourself into debt. The second part is not important until you have enough money that it matters that you make your money grow. So if you've got $100,000, whether you get 8 or 12% is a few $1,000s difference. But when you've got millions of dollars, all of a sudden that delta becomes much, much more important. And you've got to be much more sophisticated and systematized in how you manage your money. And what I've realized is how much my money mindsets about going back to what I talk about, don't blow up, have sometimes restricted me from taking certain opportunities. And we can talk about today, like nothing makes sense in the market today, right? If you look at the market today, gold is going up at the same time the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 go up. And at the same time, the Fed is cutting interest rates, and yet interest rates are going up. Like, none of this makes any sense to me. And I think that's where my struggle is. I didn't realize how much the Fed interferes with what's going on. And the reality is, I don't think all the financial experts know this is weird, but nobody knows how to fix it because we're in uncharted territory. And so that's where it kind of becomes an issue. And what I'm kind of learning is what you actually have to do is instead of trying to figure out or direct the wave, just find the wave and ride it, even if it's absurd. And just have a way that when you see the wave is cresting, get the hell out of the way. And so I'm working on that more and more. But I think that's really the struggle. And I think what happens is too often people try and figure out how to invest up front. They don't bother to invest, right? And then they never get the compounding going. And that literally is the universal principle behind everything. Get your compounding rolling, and then you can start tweaking and investing properly, and never put all your eggs in one basket unless you're really good at managing the basket. Warren Buffett's really good at managing his basket. But the reality is, and this is the other thing that I kind of learned, if you go back and you look at the principles of how he did things and how he built it, he couldn't do that today. Not in the same way. He would need to have a different way to build wealth today than the way that he built wealth. And so I know for a lot of my time, I was always learning from people who had done it a particular way, not realizing, yeah, but that doesn't work anymore. And the tides have shifted, and being able to say, how do you figure out where the tide is going and what the direction is today instead of following what happened before? And I think that was a tough lesson to learn, and one that I'm still working through.
Yeah, but I think what's beautiful about it, you've made a couple of comments through the course of this interview, Rocky, about almost like I'm reframing here, but kind of like disciplined accumulation. We're not going to worry about 8% versus 12% as much as we're going to worry about let's get 100K in the bank that we can be Let's build our systems where we are spending less than we're making. And I really think there's a lot of strength in that. I think you and I both have lots of friends, not just a couple of the guys in our mastermind that are going through it right now, but like friends in general who, when given the option between kind of steady, consistent, good financial choices and the next 35x Hail Mary, that if this hits, this is going to be the one, boys. This is the one that's going to change my future, my family's future. 1 out of 20 of those Hail Marys is going to work, but it's just no substitute. It's so stressful relative to just running your life well, right? What would you say to that?
I agree with you. And here's the thing. Well, the first question is, can you survive the 9 losses to make the odds to win with number 10? And then the second thing is, when you do win with number 10, do you now think you're the smartest guy in the room? And now you take your big winnings and you go bet it again. And in betting again, you blow up. Because, the casino owner never loses. His thing is, oh, Tyler came in today and you know what? He's borrowing some money. He'll be back tomorrow to return it. Because it's that constant gambling attitude. And I think that's a mindset issue, that people are always trying to win big instead of consistently doing the work. And that is that, Warren Buffett didn't get his first billion until he was in his 50s. The reason Warren is so rich is because he's still alive in his 90s, right? If you think about it, that's 40 years of more compounding. And that comes to the other half of this shift in mindset. My original mindset was to get enough money to retire. And now I don't want to retire. So I'm less worried about how much money I have in retirement. I'm just like, hey, as long as I can generate revenue and I can have fun making money, I'm not going to stop making money. And so that has been a massive mindset shift for me. I'm going to work well into my 70s, maybe into my 80s, or as long as I can be healthy, active, and sharp, I'm going to keep making money. It'll shift how I do it and what I do, but I'm not going to stop and rust.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the traditional American work in the factory for 45 years and then retire to finally get a break in life, Rocky, that just doesn't work anymore with knowledge work, because the kind of work that you and I do, we can still do it when we're 75. And it's not like our joints are dead from lifting gravel into a pit. And so we actually do atrophy and die pretty quickly if you and I choose not to stay engaged. And I think for me, this is similar to what you said. Maybe my mindset shifts from how can I maximize financial ROI to maybe how can I maximize impact? And the impact still may include money, but I might, find ways to do good for the community or something like that, as well as make money. And I think that's a great way to approach it.
Well, and that's the intersection of how do you have fun and make money, right? And maybe you won't make as much. That's okay. You don't have to. You're maximizing life instead of maximizing money. And so again, that's a shift that you have the ability. And the other thing is, the longer we keep doing this, the better we get. So it's not even like it's a curve where we start to drop off. We continue to get better and better. The person who I learned from, I think he's in his late 70s. And he's like, yeah, I retired 4 times for a couple weeks at a time. He's like, I love what I do. This is exciting to me. And I'm with him. I'm like, I love doing this. And that's why I love hanging out with him, to constantly learn, grow, and improve. And we'll see what the next phase is. Who knows? But I'm going to keep going.
So, quote, I was reading the weekly James Clear newsletter that comes out a couple days ago, and quote I wanted to share with you because I think it dovetails nicely with your comments. And what I kind of view this as being the Rocky mindset on finances. He says, grow fast, build to crash. grow slow, built to last. And so he was kind of like simply drawing this dichotomy between, I've got to hit a home run. I've got to hit a home run. I've got to hit a home run versus what if I just set up the rhythms and patterns, systems, habits of my life in a way to almost guarantee success over the long haul. And, hey, if you're Buffett, occasionally being an early investor in American Express also pays off in terms of that.
It does. And there's another guy that I have learned from and studied from. His name is Naval Ravikant. And he did an entire series. It was called How to Get Rich Every Time. And he basically said, there are principles that if you follow these principles, you essentially are going to be batting in the high 90s on financial success. I think in his thing was we're going to be batting 99%. You will have success. The 10th of a percent is, a black swan event or, your health or something outside of normal. But if you just follow these principles on building wealth, it works. And his principles are based on so many, including probably James Clear's of play infinite games, right? Which is what we're playing with work. I have an infinite work game. It's not a finite type of thing. I'm growing constantly. Keep showing up, keep taking action, and keep moving forward. And that's what it comes. And don't blow up. Don't bet it all on one number. Because if you blow up, you're done. Whereas if you make small bets throughout, you're kind of guaranteed to keep winning, and you will lose bets, and that's okay. That's another mindset shift of not looking at things as failure anymore. Just looking, hey, I'm going to do experiments. Some are going to work, some aren't. And so I'm going to play my life as experiments and just shifting the psychology around that, I think.
I think that's really, really good advice, Rocky. Rocky, let's touch on relationships for a minute. I know how important relationships are to you, just as a friend of yours, but also with your wife and your kids. Like looking back, Rocky, again, guys, remember episode 1 was 2017, but Rocky's been in this game prior to 2017. Rocky, how has your approach to family time, to relationship building, kind of the essence of that core pillar or principle, how has that evolved over the last maybe decade?
So with family, we were extremely intentional in the sense that I was always there for my kids. So I always made that time, money trade-off with work to say, I will always have time to be with my kids. We systematized things, which meant I had to coach because if I coached, I got to pick practice time. I could move games around to my schedule, right? And so it was doing all those types of things, I think, with family. And when I was working in a W-2 job, we always took 2-week vacations a year. We took 2 weeks in the summer, sometimes longer, but we also found for us and the kids, when we went away, you go beyond 2 weeks and vacation turns into work. So unless we were going international, we did that. And then we always shut down between Christmas and New Year's for 2 weeks. And I stopped visiting people during that time. I always said, my home's open, want to come. I'm not going anywhere. Like it was that intentional slowdown time and not having to deal with all of the hassles out there. So that's how we've always lived. And even now, people are like, oh, you went away. Did you go for work or for vacation? And I'm like, those words don't ring. Like when we go away, it's work, it's vacation, it's like I was just down by you in Atlanta at a conference, and my wife was there. My daughter came in. My son came in. She works a little. I work a little. It just all melds together. It's not like this or that. It's how do we meld it all together? As far as other relationships, I think I really struggled early on in building relationships, doing that. I think the world has become easier. Like when I went to college and you left, if you moved, you had to change your phone number. Like you couldn't take your phone number with you wherever you went. And so, if you missed the move message, that person dropped out of your life. There was no social media. We used to buy the directory from the school. They used to sell it like you could, every year thereafter. And and back then phone calls were expensive too. And so, these things just didn't always happen and you didn't always keep touch. I've gotten much, much better at it. I'm still refining it in the sense that, the mindset, oh, I need to meet more people. No, actually what I need to do is spend more time with the people I've already met and building out better systems and processes. And that's an area that I'm going to be working on over this next year, is really, really refining that part of the relationship. How do I systematize making sure that I'm always following up, reaching out, making connections, and doing that? I've been a little lazy with it. And so I know I need to tweak that part of it.
I can struggle with that too, though. It's so easy, especially like if you or I go to a conference, whether we're speaking or not, and you meet people and you go out to the dinner, and it can be really tempting for me, and it sounds like for you and I were similar in this regard, to kind of half-ass a million relationships instead of having a few deep relationships and kind of leaning into them. So I'm with you, man. When you figure that out, let me know. I'd love to, I'd love to glean that from you. Listen, dude, final question. Cause I listen, I know how it works. You guys are listening to this daggum episode. You've made it almost an hour in. We're going to deliver value until the last second. We also want to be respectful of your time. Rocky, thinking about the spiritual side of your life, like how does that continue to play a role for this podcast and in your life in general?
So in my life in general, spirituality, I think, is a big part of it. And it's really diving deep and trying to uncover the truth. And I've been doing that a lot lately, and then taking that truth and incorporating it into daily life. And also, I read across a ton of different spiritual genres, meaning different religions, Stoic philosophy, and all these things, and trying to find the universal truths that flow across all of them. And then also, how does that become the part of your life? Like, what is it for you? And I think what I have found with most religions and in organized religions is people go to the church and the first thing, or whatever it is, they don't even know the tenets of their own religion. The reality is a lot of people never picked it. Their parents dragged them off, and that's what you became. And then there is the cafeteria style. Well, we agree with these three things, but we disagree with those things. And it's like, wait, this isn't how it works. And then I think it's the discernment and listening, and understanding. And when you really, like, you can go back to the Bible and look at it. And Jesus says, I say these stories because people aren't listening. And he tells you that in there, like people don't hear. Even when they hear, they don't understand, and they don't take action, and they don't live in alignment with their values. And I don't profess for you should be this. I go, figure out what you want to be, and then make sure you actually live in alignment with it. Because I think most people don't. They haven't taken the time to discern what is my spiritual belief? How am I going to live in alignment with it in every part of my day? It's not, oh, I go on Sunday morning to something. It's every day and every moment is in alignment with that. And that's an area that I've been spending a lot of time lately, of truly finding the right materials to understand at a much, much deeper level beyond what other people's interpretations of the words are. What I have found is there's a lot of man's interpretation, but when you go back to the core and you actually study the source documents, you can't find what they're talking about. And that takes time and effort and a lot of work. And that's been a big part of what I've been working on lately is that effort. And takes a long time because these books are really long and I can only read so much in a day before my head hurts.
Yeah. Well, something I really respect about you, Rocky, and I think I'm on the same quest you are, which is how do I live an integrated life where this is why I think these kind of 8 principles or 9 principles, these principles you put together are so powerful, is that they're a quest to live an integrated life. I want it to be weird for you to say, am I on vacation or am I working? I want it to be weird for you to say, are you going to retire or are you going to not retire? Because I want to live a life that is holistic. And so I just want to, I'm just saying this as a friend, man. I really respect that about your quest. And I can see meaningful progress in your life over the last 5 years of just integrating all your values and living them consistently instead of just talking about them or just showing up to a Sunday service or whatever other day of the week service. Hey, I want to ask you one question because I had people ask me this and I didn't know how to answer this, Rocky, because I recently had a podcast. When I sold my company, the podcast disappeared. So the question is this, man, we're 400 plus episodes into Richer Soul. Like, what is the future of this podcast? What is your current vision for where you see this thing going? And then we'll close with that.
I don't think anything's going to change. When I first started this podcast, there was kind of a financial component to it. Like, hey, I can build a business around this. The financial component's gone. So this is nothing but let's call it an expensive hobby. But it also does balance my other podcast and my business, because at the end of the day, I help people make money. And people think, oh, money's evil. I'm like, no, it's not. And hey, go listen to 400 episodes of how it's not. Don't call it. Then you can come talk to me. So I think it's that. The other thing it does is it allows me to meet and build some amazing relationships, right? We would never have had this conversation if it weren't for this. And I've had some amazing guests. So like some of them are spiritual, some of them are like I get to talk to experts in each of these different areas. And all right, so I haven't had Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, but I've literally had the people right below them as guests to help me in all these different areas of life to learn from them. And a lot of these people, like if I called them up and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you for an hour, there wouldn't even be a number because there's no way they would sell their time. And yet they all talk to me for free. So it's kind of like that little secret. You get to build amazing relationships. And it's the time before and the time after we record where a lot of the magic happens. So, and it's even the follow-ups after that in the things that occur. So it's been fun. I will say the one thing that most of my guests say is we talked about things that I don't talk about elsewhere. And the questions were quite insightful and made them think. And so it's not just that what you can get somebody on here that might have done 50 other episodes and you'll get something different here.
So cool. Yeah, I think that is such a unique niche for Richer Soul. Well, Rocky, thanks for letting me hijack your show today, bring you into the spotlight. And I just thought it was a miss that we're not getting to hear more of how you're applying these things. I found this discussion to be extremely energizing for me. And so thanks for letting me join you, buddy. Let me just turn the reins back over to you and you can close the show here.
No, thank you so much for doing it. I really appreciate it. I was kind of half and half on what I was going to do for the first episode of 2025. And part of that is because I started this on our first episode was January of 2017. And so every year it's kind of a reflection of, hey, this is the anniversary and what are we doing or what are we talking about? So I think this was perfect. Thank you for doing it.
You bet.
One of the things that I'm known about in my mastermind group is consistency, clarity, and just showing up all the time and doing the work. And as I look back at all these years, I still think that's true. That's what it is. I was very clear on where I wanted to go. How is it going to get there wasn't exactly clear. And honestly, I think I've gone a lot further than I expected. We've changed course a little bit, but not our core sentiments and our core values. I want to thank you for listening, and I appreciate that. I hope this is helpful. We're always available for questions, reach out to me, say hi, let me know how things are going, connect on social, and we're happy to do that as well. Thank you so much for listening. We're starting the new year of 2025. I hope it is wonderful for you. I'm looking forward to more and greater opportunities coming up. And I'm also looking for seeing where we go in the future with this as well, and what amazing guests we're going to have. We're just going to continue to go forth. So thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful and abundant week. We'll chat soon.